where we're not just raising babies and putting them back out. We have to do a lot to make sure that they're healthy, they're going back to the right environment. And that takes a lot of different types of knowledge.
The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. Appreciate you tuning in and watching and listening. We got a fun show for you today. We're going to talk a little bit more about rehabbers today, Don.
Yes, going to learn a lot more.
Good to have you back with us.
You bet. Good to be here. Good to be here.
You want to kick off with a radio station for this week?
Sure. ESPN WMC ESPN 790 in Memphis. Love that station. We're on Saturday mornings. We follow our good friend Larry Ray. Outdoors with Larry Ray has been on the air for 20 years. Just celebrated that recently.
Yeah.
And man, it's a great spot to be in. We appreciate WMC and all they've done for WildCast.
Yeah, awesome. That's pretty cool to think we're on an ESPN radio.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. WildCast is everywhere.
We get out there. You mentioned Bristol to Memphis, and we'll go from Memphis to Bristol this time.
Yeah, Memphis to Bristol. You can hear this show on the radio. You can catch us on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find that list of radio stations at tnwildcast.com.
Yep.
You can watch us if you want to look at us. We're not always the best thing to look at, but if you want to watch, you can do that on our YouTube channel, our Facebook, our Instagram. We're out there everywhere.
Today's the exception. We have some very, very nice looking young ladies.
Yeah.
that are here. And this doesn't happen very often,
No.
I got to tell you.
No,
it's mostly guys,
Ugly guys in here.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got, this is the show to watch.
They have brightened our studio for sure.
For sure.
Guys, glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, let's introduce these ladies. Devon Blackburn from Lillie Birds Wildlife and Debbie Sykes from Nashville Wildlife Conservation.
Great to be here. Hi, guys.
Hey.
They were here recently. We talked about injured and orphaned wildlife and that kind of thing. But today we're talking about rehabilitators and what they do. So that's going to be a fun conversation. I'm excited to get started in this.
You talk about dedication.
Mm-hmm.
These two are a great example of the heart they have for the wildlife and taking care of nature, and you guys are you're awesome for doing what you do. And we get calls at the front desk a lot. What do I do? And you guys are our lifeline. You really are. And we appreciate what you do, and it's amazing how much you do with. You're a not-for-profit organizations, aren't you?
We are.
And how does that work? I mean, you donations and that kind of thing. Is that how you do your work?
Yes, we have our lives outside of our rehabilitation work, where we continue to get paid for our own costs of living.
Right. Yeah.
And then we are a part of these organizations that are not-for-profit and thrive on community charity. So, we can't cover all those costs. It gets nutrition alone is very expensive.
Just for a week of possums, you're looking at $100.
Wow.
One group of possums. Yeah.
Right. So in the when you're not doing the wildlife rehabilitation, what do you each do for a living?
I work in veterinary medicine.
Okay.
So I am...
Oh, that's a good connection.
It is.
It helps.
It's a huge help. But there's so much that clinically happens at my day-to-day job with companion animals that is not how it works with the natural history of the wildlife that we are dealing with in those settings. So there's a real good segue, because animals to animals, but also it's a lot different.
Right.
And so I'm going to Vol State to also be a veterinary technician. And then I teach other wildlife rehabilitators through the IWRC, which is the International Wildlife Rehab Council.
Okay.
And so teach them how to be wildlife rehabilitators. There's a whole course for that. And then I also work for a board-certified veterinary behaviorist, so training animals and things like that.
Neat.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's not very far outside of what you do as a rehabilitator. You know, your everyday profession. So that's pretty cool.
And we get to use
well
that to help
connected.
us.
We do. Yeah, there's a lot of carryover from one to the next.
And you guys need, as part of what you do as a rehabilitator, you need to have a connection with a veterinary
Absolutely.
outlet, don't you?
Yes.
Somehow.
Yeah, we're not. I think a lot of people think that we are veterinarians and they can bring us animals and we can give them antibiotics, but that's the vet's job.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have that formal education. They know expansive
Dosages and all
yes,
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Lots of things.
We do have to take in, like Devon was saying, the natural consideration. So where you might shave a dog for surgery, you shouldn't shave. You know, I got a possum in that had been shaven at a vet clinic and couldn't be released for months just because of, you know, having to grow the hair back. You can't release a shaved possum. And
That's
things
part
like
of that crossover. We're teaching them while they're teaching us.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a give.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So it's sometimes on your own dime, and it's a lot of times on your own time, right? I mean,
Yep.
So you're looking for donations. Do you look for food donations as well as monetary donations?
Yes, we do
Yeah.
have to kind of consider. So we both feed our animals very high-end, you know, organic food because a lot of the times the pesticides do cause issues for things like turtles, and so it does take a lot of money to do that. So we are looking for that kind of food donations, and then the staples as well, like cat food and.
Yes, and some that are very specific to that animal. So they don't all just eat cat food or dog food. You have to go out and get some really interesting things sometimes. Anything from small prey items that can be insects to small mammal prey items, and those are not just from the supermarket or the pet store.
Right.
So there's a lot of holes in my backyard from digging up dirt for our eastern mole. So
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. So it's not as easy sometimes just to go buy the food that you need. So
that would be great.
Right.
Just a wildlife rehab store.
Doesn't exist.
no.
well, we've kind of touched on some of the things, but what are, I mean, it's a long list, I'm sure. I know you've got a list there in front of you, but what do rehabbers do?
The easiest way to start off is just kind of by defining it. And so we brought our definition, which is the treatment and temporary care of injured, diseased, and displaced indigenous animals and subsequent release of healthy animals to appropriate habitats in the wild. So there's kind of a lot in there where we're not just raising babies and putting them back out. We have to do a lot to make sure that they're healthy, they're going back to the right environment. And that takes a lot of different types of knowledge.
The approach in the rehab setting is the foundation for getting to that end goal. So you have to know the natural history of that animal.
Yeah.
You can't sit and stare at rabbits. They don't get stared at. Anytime that eye contact is made, that's usually the last time it's seen.
Yeah.
So they are prey animals. So we do camera setups and a lot of kind of watching secretively or hiding behind a branch while you're feeding something. And you don't want this animal to then go out and think, oh, well, I can just come and take food from you.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, we don't want them to recognize humans, but we also don't want them to get used to having a lot of stress and being fine with stress in their lives, because you don't want a possum who, when somebody's approaching, they're not taking off and running. So we have to make sure we're limiting our interactions as well with those cameras.
Yes.
So do y'all have like suits you wear and like, come in looking like the animal? Or
that would be great, but they have a great sense of smell, so they would just be able to smell us.
And that's one of the first indications you get on. They will assess you for you. You know, when you walk into that room, are they coming up to the front of the cage, or are you just seeing that little waddle off and then hide?
Yeah.
So.
I remember our experiences with the Appalachian bear rescue.
Oh, yeah.
And how that sort of tactic was always in place. You know, that there's shielding up so that there was no human interaction or ability for the animals to see that it was a human providing the food. You know, and it was, placed through troughs and things that it's really interesting. All the extra effort you have to go through to make sure that part is held up.
If you have nocturnal animals and diurnal animals. You know, you got to stay just ahead of their schedule so that they're not engaging you while you're cleaning or feeding.
Oh, okay.
And you're not feeding a possum first thing in the day. You're adjusting your schedule so you feed them at nighttime when they wake up so they get fresh food. And
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of stuff in the hospital setting, too, that has to kind of go into that. And how you put that, you can't put a bunny in near a hawk because you've got the predator-prey relationship, so you have different rooms.
So you got to stress them all out by putting them in the same room.
Yeah.
I think about back to the feeding you mentioned. So y'all schedules are crazy, I'm sure. The different animals, the different feeding times. Talk a little bit about that.
God bless our husbands.
Yeah, we have good support behind us. We do. Oh, little mammals in particular that stay on a 24-hour schedule. So some of the little squirrels that come in, you're going to be up every 3 hours feeding those guys. And that doesn't stop until they're a couple of weeks old. Wow. And you might have many, many of them at one time. So it's not like you're just waking up and putting a little formula in. You're going to the next one. You're going to the next one. It takes some time.
Wow.
So,
and they're not wanting to eat, right? Because they're in this new environment. Their mom, you know, maybe they've been kidnapped. Maybe their mom's been killed, whatever. And so you're having to deal with the stress of that as well. It takes extra time when they first come in because, yeah, you need to manage that.
So how about volunteers? Now, you guys can't do every bit of that all the time, you know, especially during heavy traffic times, I would think.
it's impossible. Yes.
Yeah, we have a really great group of volunteers. We have education volunteers, hospital volunteers, and then we also have transport volunteers because there's no way we can be feeding animals and helping people with something that, you know, that injured bunnies or things like that need to come in.
And not everybody has to work with the animals. Some people want to. Some people do not.
A lot of support that they could provide.
Yeah, food
without
needs to
doing
be
that.
prepared. Laundry needs to be washed and folded. I mean, cages need to be cleaned.
Sure, yeah.
But then the volunteers have to adhere to those guidelines as well, making sure keeping your voices low. And it's such a different environment from their work or their regular life where you have to come in and, you know, quiet, no perfume, no.
Right.
Yep.
Huh.
What if it's cedar? Or
Whoa, that's a good question. Yeah. Everybody's got to rub cedar all over them before they come in.
So, more on what the rehabbers do. What's the qualifications? What's some qualifications that you look for or need to be able to do this work?
Our baseline is what the state sets.
Okay.
So we have to meet all the criteria set by the state, and that's on a website that is accessible to the public. You're going to need at least 200 hours. As of now, this is what the criteria is. 200 hours to work with the animals that you're wanting to work with.
And that's minimum, too, so that's...
Right. The more, the better. The longer we do this, the more we're learning. So it's not every rehabber is going to do every species. So you want to really focus on the ones that you plan to work with. And then have your connections with your veterinary professionals. Make sure that your facilities are set up and ready to go, and that it's going to be, a lot of us are home-based. So you have to have that support and understanding from your neighbors and your family and anybody else in that common area. So that's just where you start. And then there's our backgrounds individually and how that applies. So some people need to learn more medicine. We're okay with the medicine, but a lot of people don't understand those things yet. So from there, knowing what your commitment to the public is, that's a huge one. Be prepared to educate people. Be prepared to report to different divisions of wildlife management, really, or biology. A lot of research happens in our environments. So I could really go on for a while with that one. And it doesn't happen overnight. It took several years for me personally in a couple of different states before I started doing what I'm doing here.
Yeah, it's a lot more than just that lover of wildlife who maybe has an area that they could set up some cages or set up facilities and house them. They got to have that knowledge, the background, the training, like you mentioned, the training you do on the side in addition to this rehab work. It all comes together. It has to all happen.
Yeah, and really, I think the biggest thing is being able to take a step back and think, like, how are my animals really doing? And comparing your animals versus the animals in the wild, they should look and kind of act the same. And so that's a big disconnect that I think a lot of people who try to raise squirrels and raccoons and fawns on their own that aren't permitted, they think like, oh, well, we raised them and they're fine. But when you kind of take that step back and you look, you realize, oh, there's a lot of things that aren't good. This rabbit's full of coccidia.
Or this bird is just not in a full molt.
Yeah. He's got stress bars on his...
Everywhere. Oh my gosh,
on
yes.
his feathers.
So, and that's just because of all the handling or the inappropriate diet because, again, you can't go buy wild bird baby food.
Right.
It's a combination of things and...
species specific.
Yes. So... which is why there are songbird specialists.
That takes me back. We mentioned it on the other show with you guys, but you have a network of people that you work with. If you get a call and you're not the specialist for that, you know who to send them to. And we get a lot of calls at the front desk, and your all's names are given to them. The list is given to them that's on our website to find someone in their area. But y'all have a good network of people that you can rely on, right?
And Tennessee is very lucky. We have an awesome songbird specialist in Middle Tennessee from Ziggy's Tree. And so very lucky to have someone like that.
It's a big deal because that person has been doing what they've been doing for a long time, and they are also well connected and resourced. And, occasionally something blows in that's not supposed to be here. So, this is our first call.
Yeah.
we need you. And we learn a lot from each other. Because back to that whole not everybody works with every species thing. I couldn't tell you too much about turtles. Debbie's your person.
I'll tell you all you want to know about turtles.
Yeah, some folks love different types of wildlife, and I find a love for others that they don't so much want to care for, or than others. But anyway, that's cool. Anything else that y'all want to talk about what a rehabber does that we've missed so far?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, but we'll narrow it down. I think one of the other things is the health commitment we have to the public. I know Devon talks a lot about zoonosis.
So you were asking about zoonosis.
Yeah.
That is, by definition, the potential to share diseases, essentially. So there are some parasites, external or internal, that some animals can give people. And some people, you'll see a lot of us wearing gloves when we're doing very routine things with the animals. We can give them things. So it's just something that is transmissible back and forth. And it may not even just be us as a concern, but our companion pets or our agriculture animals. So we have really good cross-contamination protocols where we're not spreading things around. And we were just talking about one of the endemic issues that we're seeing right now, highly pathogenic avian influenza. And that's affecting a lot of the flocking birds that people use in agriculture or that you see congregating at water sources. So your ducks, your geese, turkeys, chickens. But the wildlife population can move some of that around without actually becoming contaminated themselves. So if we are seeing things, we need to report things. So that's a really big deal with fungal infections in reptiles. It's a big deal with rabbit hemorrhagic disease right now, chronic wasting disease. And part of our commitment to the public is not just helping with monitoring the wildlife that we directly work with, but guarding public health.
And that comes in our hospital, right? So everything that we're doing in our hospital, we're not picking up one turtle and then picking up another turtle. We have to go through, wash our hands in between each turtle. And so it's time consuming just to do those types of things.
A lot of cleaning.
Yeah.
And you're not putting all the turtles in one bin or all the squirrels in one bin. You're separating those, right?
Yes. Yeah. And everybody has to be accounted for as a group and as an individual. So a lot of hands off, still quick hands on, getting a quick weight, making sure that everything looks right, all in about 20 seconds. Boop, back in.
Yeah. Wow.
And then on top of all that, we're also dealing with public, and I don't say dealing with public. We get to work with the public. We are very happy to. But it can be hard when there's high stress situations. Maybe a raccoon just came in and killed a whole chicken flock and trying to help with a different coexisting.
Yes.
issues.
Don't want to villainize them when they're doing what they know to do, and they're just taking opportunity. So the chicken coops.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I was talking about my chickens earlier, and you said, "Can we talk about that?" I said, sure, yeah. I've got some chickens, got some chicks that I'll be getting outside here pretty soon, and so what's your suggestions for folks who have farm animals and things like that they want to protect?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. If you're going to keep them in a chicken coop, really what you're looking at is you got to think about how the predators can get in. You know, they can get through a thin net on the top of the roof. They can dig underneath the chicken coop. So you do have to make sure there's hardware cloth on all 4 sides, and they need to be really thin. So that chicken wire, raccoons can just stick their hand in and grab the feather of the chicken and get it that way. But if you have like the 1/4 inch or even the 1/2 inch, they can't do that.
Okay.
So really making sure we tend to be experts on that because we have to design our cage to keep predators in and out.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, chewing, digging, like thinking about all the different things that they like to do.
Yep. Sometimes it involves a little concrete,
Yeah.
just on top of the wire.
Yeah.
But-
trying to keep rats out who can maybe fit through some of the hardware cloth. We had to concrete ours recently because one got in, and
Yeah. So there's a lot of things there that you got to think about.
Yeah, really.
You know, I've had chickens a while, and I don't have that tight of wire, so maybe that's why I've lost a few chickens.
yeah, and I mean we know from learning from other people's mistakes and then our own as well, and so that's the other part about networking is this just happened, do this with your enclosure, so go by, and we started doing concrete and things like that.
Yep. We've probably touched on this a little bit, but I thought maybe we'll bring it up again. Is I have similar to a vet ? So, are you do a lot of some of the same stuff that a vet might do, but how similar are you to a vet, and what's the differences from what you guys do versus what a vet? You both work for vets or have that experience.
Yeah. Well, like Debbie mentioned, you're not doing wound repairs on these animals and removing all their hair like you would your cat or your dog, because they are in protected situations.
Sure.
They don't have to worry about their body temperatures because they're inside with you. And that is something that we stay pretty sharp on, because we know the longer it takes them to grow that hair, the longer they're captive. The longer they're captive, the less likely they are to be a successful release. So,
because that's the goal. You want them to be released. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every time. All of them. And one of the things that we are doing that might parallel that people would see is doing medications, but we cannot prescribe them. We are still doing them under the counsel of a veterinarian. And we both have some pretty good vets that we work with, and they are accessible to us outside of clinical hours, so that's really helpful. But we are doing a lot of wound care. We're doing a lot of parasite treatment. It's a very undesirable part of what we do, but
I like doing fecals.
there's some surprising things.
Yeah.
So we're having to test for a lot of those zoonotic diseases as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we're protecting the environment doing that.
Sure.
At our rehab sites, but also letting that animal back out. You know, that's also going to lead to success, is sending them back out without parasites. But it's good for our health also.
Sure.
We are monitoring recoveries and charting and keeping up with things in a way that you would expect to see a veterinary practice do it.
So if that one comes back, we got a good chart on it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're also tracking each individual animal's weight. So even if you have a group of 13 possums, you're weighing every single individual every day.
Okay.
Gets a little tricky. You got to do a lot of little
Nail
flags and
Yeah.
everybody has identification. But there's a lot that people may see us doing that they would say, oh, you know, they're doctors, they got it. We're not doctors. We work with doctors.
Yeah.
But we also know what those medications are and how they affect that animal and which medications you can use, because some of these are prey animals.
Yeah.
Or they are on the list of hunted. And we don't want that to be something that is going to, again, cause harm to other animals or other people. So you have to have a pretty good knowledge base of what you're doing based on medications before you just start slinging stuff around.
And you touched on something a second ago, too, that I know must be really important, to have after-hours access to that professional veterinarian, when you need it.
Yes.
Not that you want to overuse that, but it's a must-have,
Right.
really.
The
You gotta,
amount of animals you get on a Friday evening at like 7 o'clock that need a vet. is
Right.
Or on
pretty-
the weekends.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And knowing how to stabilize them, make sure that they are candidates for rehabilitation, because sometimes when the mower blade isn't up high enough, some of those animals can't be saved. But the ones that can, knowing the appropriate thing to do with that wound and get them through until they can go see the doctor.
Right.
And that brings up another good point is we do have to euthanize a lot of animals.
Sure.
And sometimes, it's heartbreaking,
Yeah.
but it is ultimately what's best for that animal. And so having to explain that to the public as well can be very difficult.
Right.
On top of dealing with the
You don't
euthanasia as
see
well.
bunnies or with carts on them.
Yeah.
That won't work out in the wild.
Right.
They
Yeah.
will not, and they don't want to be, if you give a wild animal a chance, if you open up the cage, they're going to choose to leave, right? They don't want to be in captivity. So
Right.
keeping that in mind too.
Well, before we run out of time, I wanted to ask about the education side.
Yeah.
Y'all are both educators. Are there any times that the animals become, they can't be released or used for education? Is that something y'all do as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have almost 10 education animals at our facility, and we keep it hands off, so we're not picking up animals and showing it to the public, because that doesn't send a great message,
Right.
right? We're treating them like wild animals. We're doing some of that training that came from working with the vet behaviorist, so that's
Okay.
yeah,
Awesome.
good crossover there.
Yeah.
And just doing, trying to show people this is what a wild animal looks like in the wild.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Making sure that not every single animal is going to qualify for that either, just because they can't be released. So they need to be well-rounded and be okay with it themselves. They need that choice.
And we go through a big assessment for that too. They have to meet all these different qualifications.
Right. Before we run out of time,
Yeah.
anybody interested in donating to the cause,
Oh, yeah.
what's the best way to do that?
You are welcome to visit our social media,
Uh-huh.
Lillie Birds Wildlife, or
And then at Nashville Wildlife CC, we also have it on our website, which is nashvillewildlifeconservation.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
Well, we'll make sure that folks can click below or find your tags below and get to y'all's channels and donate. That'd be awesome. I'm sure y'all would appreciate that very much.
Yes,
We
thank
would.
you.
Well, thanks, Don.
You bet. I
Thanks
learned
to-
a lot today.
Yeah, I did too. And thanks, Rusty, for pulling this together. And thank you, Devon and Debbie, for what you do and being on the show again. And we'll look forward to working with y'all in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Keep up the good work. This is Tennessee WildCast. Remember tnwildlife.org for all things wildlife. Don't forget our e-store at shop.gooutdoorstennessee.com. Pick up a hat or some swag there. If you want a license, it's gooutdoorstennessee.com. So we encourage you to go out there and buy a license. Support wildlife and get outside and enjoy it. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.